Welcome to the Ascent Podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, Wealth Advisor at Moxie Wealth Management. Today on the show, we chat with Steve Patterson, co-host of Donna and Steve on My Talk 107.1, and at the time of our recording, a co-host with Elizabeth Reese on Twin Cities Live. Steve talks about his serendipitous path to success, including getting really comfortable with hearing the word no and believing in what he calls divine disappointment. Steve, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm really happy to hang out with you guys and glad that the timing finally worked out.
Steve, why don't we get started with how did you get started in broadcasting? Where did that seed get planted for you?
I used to watch news broadcasters when I was a kid, and I would see them. If I ever saw them out in the wild, a broadcaster from a local news channel, I just thought, oh my gosh, look at them. Look at what they're doing. Look at the camera. Look at the mic. It all seems so exciting. And so I was enamored with it at an early age. My mom and dad are not affiliated with the broadcasting industry at all. It just seemed interesting to me. We had this channel. I lived in a small town, 4,000 people. There was this channel that would run on, it was channel 3. So just whatever the bunny ears would get to.
Right.
They had a news article that would just be written out, and it took about 60 seconds for it to turn the page. And so we would try to time it out, read it out loud like we were a news anchor. And then we would read it. Whenever we timed it perfectly, it was so exciting. So I guess from the time I was a little guy, figured out how to read, I would try to pretend I was a newsman in my own home. But fast forward to college, I knew I wanted to get involved in broadcasting. And I was in the Southern California area at the time. Born in Pittsburgh, went out to Southern California, and I thought, well, this is good because if I try to get into broadcasting, there's a lot of opportunities out here in and around LA. So I had graduated from college and was working in my admissions office as an admissions counselor, but I had a buddy who I had done some TV classes with, and he had interned at KTLA. KTLA is a big local station in LA, and they've got a big entertainment department. It's not really big, it's small, but it's very successful. He interned there and said, hey, I found a publicist's email address. We should try to get on a red carpet. So he gave me the email address, and I emailed this publicist from NBC Universal and said, hey, we are going to launch a website, and we would love it if we could come out and cover the premiere of We Are Marshall. This was a Matthew McConaughey movie. Tried to send a convincing email. We had nothing. We didn't have a website. We had nothing. We still don't know why. She responded, yes, you can come. We were the second to last in line on the red carpet. It was actually a green carpet because they were doing a football field theme for that football movie. Second to last in line. The only people behind us were from the state of West Virginia.
And just for clarity for our listeners, Marshall University, which was the focus of that movie, happens to be in West Virginia.
Yes. But we just couldn't believe it. We were like, we're here. This is incredible. And we ended up getting a quick question in with Matthew McConaughey, which was really exciting. And I actually also got to talk with James Denton, former Desperate Housewives actor, has been on a lot of Hallmark things since then, who now lives in Minnesota. We then just found another publicist's email, sent her the video of the premiere coverage that we had done. And then said, we would love to cover your upcoming movie. And I don't know how we started getting, after a while, after several months, instead of reaching out, they started reaching out and inviting us to red carpets. And it was just, we didn't even have the website yet.
I was going to say, did you create the website eventually or not?
That was very difficult. So 6 months later, we actually launched the website, and we were just posting on YouTube in the meantime, which, bear in mind, this is like the year 2006 into 2007. YouTube was early. They didn't know who was legit, who wasn't legit on YouTube. And so we just posted there. And then we would share it on Facebook and stuff like that. And then we did that for 2.5 years, red carpet after red carpet, and never got paid a single dime.
Well, I was going to say, from YouTube or wherever else, were you collecting any advertising or anything? You were just doing it for fun?
We were doing it for fun, but we were doing it strategically because we were doing it to get reps. No better place to learn how to interview somebody than under the lights, red carpet. You look around, you're on Hollywood Boulevard. You see celebrities, actors, actresses coming toward you that you've grown up on the other side of the country, loving their stuff. You see them, and it's really a lights, camera, action kind of a vibe. And then the publicist comes over and says, 2 questions. So now you're really on the spot. And 2 is if you're lucky. Sometimes you get 1. Sometimes you're grouped with other press. And then you have to fight to get your question in. No better place to learn to hold your ground, to have a clear thought. And our thought was like, look, we're at the end of the line. We don't care what you're wearing. We really don't care about the movie. We want to develop a fun, quick interaction with you and show it to our friends and family and anybody else who happens to see it. We knew that getting that kind of tape was going to be good for us and hopefully someday would lead to something. And it did. It took longer than we thought it would because we had close calls during those 2.5 years that we thought some things were going to break our way.
Okay.
But in the end, it was that 2.5 years, that passion project that ended up literally paying off when our website got purchased and we ended up getting a job. But that was after a bunch of disappointments and us thinking, are we wasting our time here? You know, you're thinking, is this leading to something more or is this just a hobby?
Wow, you know, that's interesting. That's awesome. So when you get picked up then, what's the first thing that happens? I mean, when that turns into your first step and from a career standpoint, what happens there?
The beautiful serendipity of it all, that the entertainment department that we stole the publicist's email from, there's an entertainment anchor there who's still on the air today. He's my favorite person to watch and have tell me the entertainment news. His name is Sam Rubin. He's great. And he's been there for 30 years now at KTLA. He was working for, at the time, what was a movie fan cable network called Reels.
Yep.
And he said, hey, they need new red carpet reporters. And he knew of my friend David, who had interned for him in the entertainment department. And he said, what about you guys? Should I send through the stuff that Steve is doing? So where we stole the email address from at the beginning, he ended up sending our tape through. And I thought, all right, whatever. I have very low expectations. And I remember the morning waking up and looking at my phone, which was a Palm Trio. And it said right out of the gates, I'll never forget it. It said, Steve, by means of introduction, my name is Stan Hubbard. I am the president and CEO of Reels Channel. And I just stopped at that line and thought, I think this is different. We had these other close calls, some flirting with different folks who we thought we might be able to team up with. And I thought this is different. I went in and I woke my wife up and I was about to go work in admissions that morning, you know. And I said, honey, I think this is a real thing. He wanted to get on the phone that day. So that day in my admissions office, I'm on the phone. People think I'm talking about financial aid with the family. I'm talking with him. I'm talking with his business partner. They're talking to me about my approach at red carpets, which was always just laughing and trying to have fun. I don't want to do gotcha stuff. And I don't care about fashion. I just want to make people laugh. And they were trying to shift from a film buff network to a movie lovers network. And then they invited me out to New Mexico, which is where they had just moved their studio from LA. The same location where Netflix now has a bunch of studios is where they had moved to. And they flew me out a couple days later. We had dinner. I was there with the owner of the network and 3 business partners. There were cigars, a bottle of wine. By the end of the 2.5-hour dinner, he offered me a job and a salary, which was an increase from what, go figure, I was making as an admissions counselor. I, against the advice of Sam Rubin, the entertainment reporter who spoke with me beforehand and said, they're going to offer you something, just get in the door, don't renegotiate, just take it. It'll be better than what you got now and you'll be on TV and the journey begins. He offered me a salary. I thought of what Sam said and immediately I just responded, still don't know why, but I said, well, I was hoping for $10,000 more than that. And then he just said, I bet we could work something out. We continue. We smoke the cigars. We're having a good time. The next day, his business partner picks me up and said, hey, by the way, we talked about it and we're just going to give you the number that you asked for. And I thought, well, I'll be darned. Look at what happened by just asking the question, not being afraid of the no, gauging that it wasn't going to be a deal breaker, me asking for a little more money.
Right.
And then we were off to the races and I started working in LA, even though they had a location in their studio was now in Albuquerque.
Yep.
And so I just turned in my 2 weeks at admissions. They were all really excited for me because they knew that, you know, I was at nightside. I was running downtown to Hollywood and trying to get this career started.
Yeah.
And then I just remember I started doing the same thing that I had been doing, but better places on the red carpet line, actually getting into the junkets where you go and sit down with the individual celebrities before their movie comes out. And I was getting paid. And I was getting paid more than I had been making. I couldn't believe it. It was incredible.
What has been your favorite interview that you've done?
Will Ferrell is one of my favorite actors. I just think he's great. He's so like my favorite comedic actor. And so when I finally got to interview him, it was for The Other Guys. He was in it. It's a sleeper good movie too. The Other Guys with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg.
Yep, Mark Wahlberg. Yep.
Interviewed them together and was so excited. They were both great. I made a couple of jokes that got them laughing, which if you can ever make like a comedy legend of yours laugh, feel great. And we would go back home, like go back to the studio or the bureau. We would watch the tape and be like, oh, shoot, they really did laugh. You know, that was exciting. Yeah. But so lovely. They were kind. They were game. They played along. We did a game with them, I remember, this rapid fire game. And they were both very funny. But here's what made it great. I left on a high. It was cool. And then maybe 3 weeks later, this happens in Hollywood in particular. When they do press, you'll interview them once for the first time ever. And before a month has gone by, you've interviewed them 3 or 4 more times. It's just the cycle of press.
Okay.
So I then go to Comic-Con down in San Diego a few weeks later. And Will Ferrell comes over. And he said to me, I said, Will, it's good to see you. And, you know, like he knows me from anybody. He talked to a gazillion reporters. And he said, what was the name of the game that we played? And I said, that was rapid fire. And then like we pulled each other in for a bro hug. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. He's one of those guys that has the special skill of remembering a bunch of individual encounters. So then I interview him a week after that and we have fun again and he's great. But here's the really cool part to make a long answer longer. Like a month had gone by or so and we had a baby and I'm at a red carpet. And they said, hey, you get one question, which is the dreaded thing. Publicist says one question, which means I'm not going to try to remind him who I am. Let's just get the soundbite that I'm looking for. And I start to ask the question. Then he says, wait a second. How are you? How was your summer? And I was like, oh, well, it's been great. I said, I had a baby. And he was like, oh my gosh, you had a baby. This is incredible. How old is your baby? And he's asking me questions. And what's great is if a publicist says one question, the celebrity obviously can just commandeer the rules at that point.
Sure, right.
And so I know I'm still going to get my question. And he's asking about the family. In the meantime, an even worse scenario, the publicist says at this other red carpet for Eastbound and Down, she says, group interview. So you and 3 other reporters fight to get a question in. You guys are going to get a question, and then we're going. So certainly there, I'm not going to try to have a personal rapport with Will Ferrell. We ask the group question. He answers a couple. And then as he's walking away, he turns back around and he says, hey, how's your baby doing? And I was like, he's doing really good. And I just thought, what a cool little 5 encounters or so that I had with him. And he was just like got progressively more thoughtful and aware. And on top of that was effortlessly funny every time.
Yeah.
And if I could interview anybody again, I would want to talk to him again. He's just great.
It's interesting. I'm always curious, like in real life, how many of the celebrities are just really nice people along the way. And I think a lot of the people that have staying power, they must have it's because people like being around them and they're so real and nice to everybody.
I think sometimes, not always, but sometimes the bigger the stars, you'll find that they really handle press a lot better than some of the up and coming stars who you can sense aren't putting their best foot forward perhaps. But big stars like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, he will make you feel like you're the only person on the planet. And he's great, and he's funny, and he's charming, and he's smart, and all that. And you know, he'll joke with you and make you the butt of the joke, but in a way that makes you feel like, oh, he likes me. Right. George Clooney, I've only ever talked to him very quickly, and he's got that old-fashioned Hollywood charm and mystique that you just feel like, I just talked to a guy that they'll be talking about in 50 years. Tom Cruise, say what you will about Tom Cruise, he again will make you feel just like you're the guy. I interviewed him talk about a dream scenario. He and Cameron Diaz were in a movie called Night and Day. Very funny action comedy. Usually you do a movie junket in LA. So they set up, they take the beds out of a Four Seasons hotel room. They put a movie poster up behind them. They're actually in a hotel room. You do it there and that's it. Sometimes when they really want to win you over, they make it a travel junket. So for this one, we went to Austria and then Spain. And it started in Austria. And I sat down and I brought my wife with me. We were just about to have a kid, first kid. And I was like, this is our last hurrah. So I bring my wife. She comes upstairs when I go to do this interview, top floor of this hotel in Austria. And I sit down and then you make a little chit chat before they start rolling the cameras. They're resetting lighting and all that. And I said, how are you guys enjoying the trip? And they said, oh, it's great. It's really good. You know, both he and Cameron are being really nice. And he said, how about you? And I said, well, this is incredible. I've never been here before. At this time I'm like 26 years old or something. I've never been here. Incredible. And I said, we're about to have a baby. And Tom Cruise immediately was like, you're going to have a baby? And then I was like, yeah, my wife is actually over in the corner, and she was full 8 months pregnant. Like, she should not have flown internationally. Let me be clear. He suddenly turns to her, locks eyes with her. Now my wife has Tom Cruise talking to her from across the room. Do you know if it's a boy or a girl? When are you due? And he's just being like, great. And so it was this amazing moment. And then he's great during the interview when the interview starts.
Right.
The next day, as if like that wasn't crazy enough, we do a 2-part interview with Cameron Diaz and Tom Cruise where we're in Sevilla, Spain. There's this town square where they shot some scenes. You walk up to a BMW Z something, all right, sexy sports car. Cameron Diaz is driving it. You do an interview. They have cameras mounted all around the square. Wow. You go through a window, talk, ask a couple questions, like a 2-minute interview. Then you get into the vehicle with her, passenger side. Buckle up. She takes you on a trip through the square and does a 180 e-brake stop. So then you stop. It's all crazy. And then you get out of the car and Tom Cruise is waiting for you. Now you do a 2-minute interview with Tom Cruise. You chit chat. We talked again about fatherhood. He was great. You're going to love it, man. It's so exciting. Here again, making you feel like he remembers stuff and he's great. He hops on a motorcycle. You get in another BMW sports car with a stunt driver, and then he leads you on a chase scene through this square as you are drifting in the BMW behind him. When that is done, he comes, opens your door, you get one more question, and the interview is over. Then, by the way, that's in Spain. The day before, you're in Austria, you do stunts, then you cover the movie premiere later.
Jeez.
And so, boy, I'm really glad that I did that free work for 2.5 years.
Right. Well, and I can't imagine you get done with that and say, yeah, I think the movie's going to be horrible. You know what I mean, right?
Listen, it could have been a student film and I would have nominated it for an Oscar.
So how do you transition from there to getting to Minnesota?
So I ended up working for Reels for several years. I did reporting stuff with them. And then they asked me to move to New Mexico from LA to go to the studio to start hosting shows for them.
Okay.
I don't know where New Mexico ranks on people's list of states I want to move to someday, but I'm going to guess for most 26-year-olds, it's not top 10. I was like, let's try it. We're young. We're kind of mobile. We had one child at the time and we moved there. So then for the next 3 years, I got to host a bunch of their shows. They would still fly me back to LA if there was a big red carpet, like for the Golden Globes or something. But I had a really predictable schedule. It was great. But the truncated version of how I got to Minnesota is we did that for 3 years. At the time, my face was probably on that network more than anybody else's. And the way I would describe it is, it's kind of like a quarterback or a coach in football. Mm-hmm. If the team is losing, if the channel's not doing well, who do you look to? You would look to the quarterback on a football team, maybe a coach, or whose face is on the most. And that was my face. And I had just co-created a show with a couple other guys. I got to host it, help write it, produce it. It was like our baby. It was like a late night talk show recap show. It was fun. We had like a faux late night setup. It was all, we thought, clever, and we thought we were doing interesting things. I then hear from my boss at the time. He said, hey, we heard from the consulting company, and they said that if this is to be believed, in their 6 years of it being a network, this is the best original show that's been created. And I had heard that there was maybe some bad news coming my way, but then I got that news. And I was like, sweet, I survived the bad news, created something good. This is great. 2 weeks later, my boss comes into my office that I shared with 2 other people. And he said, Steve, can I see you in my office? So me being a perpetual clown, I stood up and I said, well, ladies, this is the end of the road. As a joke, I said that. And I remember he shook his head, turned around and started walking toward his office, got into his office, ripped the Band-Aid off and said, we are not going to be renewing your contract at the end of this year. And we're going to be removing you from the show that I just got all like the thumbs up on, that I co-created, that I was hosting, right? Like my fingerprints all over it. We're bringing in someone else from LA to fly in once a week to host it. And we'll use you as needed as your contract runs out.
Huh. So you don't have any like creative content? I mean, are you just an employee and anything you create is the network's?
Yes. So it's not like you have a proprietary show that you can shop somewhere else.
Got it.
It's theirs. And so that was a real gut shot. And so I did what any man would do in that moment, which is I went to my dressing room, cried, and called my wife. I just got a really bad update from my boss, which is they're letting me go at the end of the year. And it was really, I was really blindsided by that. And that was a really, really tough moment. And then I remember that day, people started coming into the office who heard about it and were like giving me their condolences. Like, dude, we heard. And again, remember, I was like the guy who was involved in so many things at that point. So you think if anyone's safe, it'll probably be him because he's helping on other things. But that also makes you very expendable in some other ways when things get bad.
Right.
Here was the blessing. I had a contract through December, and the company's great about honoring contracts. So I stayed on. I continued to help with other shows, kept producing television. I was on camera, co-hosting a show, and just kind of trying to find the next thing. What was difficult was I started reaching out to entertainment shows, didn't hear back from anybody. Started working on an entertainment show that was sort of a pilot phase back in LA through KTLA, a show that they were working on called Hollywood Mix, if I remember it. Thought I was going to get picked up and I'd be a reporter, looked at a house in Pasadena. The end of the test period came and then was surprised to find out that they were not picking it up. So suddenly that had vanished. So then I tried to get into news stations and I was like, maybe I should try to get into news. I haven't done it before, but it's broadcasting. I can learn it. I can figure out how to develop those skills. And I called a couple former bosses, mentors, and they were like, look, don't overthink it. Stay in the game, find a new place, flex a new muscle, get better, keep pressing forward. So then I was trying to get into news and trying to get an agent that could get me a call back from a news director. There was like a 5 or 6 month stretch where I got hit with so many no's. I finally got an agent who was willing to take a chance on me because a lot of the news agents were like, you don't have news experience. So then I have a guy who says, I think you're great on camera and we can teach you news. Let me help. And then he was super enthusiastic, love him. But we together went through a months long stretch of him sending me an update every Friday of the news directors he had spoken to, their answer, which was always no, and why they said no. And so often it was, we think he's great on camera. Get back to us when he has experience.
Yeah.
The great catch-22, right?
How do you get experience without experience? Yep.
A little tricky.
Right.
And so that time was it was such a significant growth period for me personally, just as as a human being in terms of learning to intentionally look for meaning or look for growth in the midst of struggle, in the midst of, I kind of talk about finding the fortune in failure. Like there's something here. I got to dig deep, but there's something here. And there was a day that I was driving to work out, had just had my 80th no, whatever it was. Like everybody's like, you are great. And for sure, we're not going to pay you. I was on my way to the gym and my dad, who doesn't work out at all, which was odd that he made this connection, but he was trying to encourage me. And he said, you're on your way to the gym right now. And think about this. When you work out, it's not until it starts to burn that the growth starts to happen. That's when you lean in. That's when you do another rep. That's the precise moment. It's not when you walk in the door and things feel good. It's when it starts to burn, when you want to quit. This is a significant moment of growth. And he said, it's like that in your life. You're in the burn phase right now. But if you lean in, God's going to help grow some good things inside of you in terms of character, in terms of trust, the ability to absorb what looks like failure and look for some good things in the midst of it. And I'll never forget that conversation. And it helped me to really sort of shift a little something in my brain of there's good here. And so now when I look back, there were all of these no's that I was so desperate to turn into a yes. And had that season of struggle gone the way, had I been given the pen to write that chapter, it would look so different. My life would look so different. I now live near family, end up on Twin Cities Live, end up getting cool opportunities with Live with Kelly and Ryan, end up getting a job in radio, entertainment talk radio. It's like all my wheelhouse. None of that would have happened had you given me control of the wheel. I was sick of hearing no, and I wanted to get through it. And so I have learned subsequently, when the door closes, it sounds cliche, but it's so true. Mm-hmm. I find myself thanking God for the disappointment. Thank you that did not go the way I hoped or planned. And it's really shows you there's something else at work outside of just your own 5-year goals.
And you were never thinking during the height of that rejection of, maybe I shouldn't be in broadcasting. Maybe I shouldn't be a host. Was there any of that in your mind of like, geez, maybe this just isn't my thing and I should try a different career?
Yeah, that did. I talk about like a crisis of confidence moment that I had that I think a lot of people relate to if you've ever been let go from something for whatever reason. Once you reach out to a couple people and it turns out they're not jumping out of their seat to get you into their place,
right?
You start to wonder, not am I any good at this, but am I maybe not going to do this anymore? I think it was more of that. Like maybe this is not the thing for me anymore, and I'll just have to put skills to use in a different way. But my hope was always that something in broadcasting would land up, because at that point I had been an admissions counselor, which was, sort of it's an entry-level job. Mm-hmm. Then I was a broadcaster, and I didn't know what that cocktail would create. And so fortunately, we didn't have to figure that out.
So did you come in then and just start with Twin Cities Live? Was that your first foray in Minnesota?
No, people may not know this, but I was a fake journalist for 7 months in the 5 Eyewitness newsroom. No, they took a chance on me. My boss from Reels ended up calling his brother, who is my boss here in the world of television at Channel 5.
Yeah.
He said, hey, we got a guy that you should check out. He doesn't have news experience, but he's a great broadcaster. So then they brought me out here. I don't know if they've ever done this before or since. They gave me a 3-day test on the air. Usually it would be like a dummy story, like go out, shoot a fake story. We'll put it together. We'll watch it. I was live on their newscast 3 nights in a row, and I wasn't hired. They were just testing me. Could that entertainment guy, the red carpet reporter, really talk about a government shutdown and how it's affecting a local brewery, or Coach Jerry Kill resigning? How about this? Day 3, I'm here, 3rd day of a test. And I tried 2 stories that morning, and sometimes stories in a newsroom look good on paper. You make calls, you do an interview, and you realize this isn't a story we thought it was.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe like 2 p.m, and we're in the newsroom talking to the assistant news director and the news director. And we were all sort of laughing like, well, maybe we're not going to get a 3rd story. We thought we were, maybe we won't. Like a scene in a movie, a producer essentially like stands up from her desk. We just got a notification. Jerry Kill's going to be having a press conference at 3:00. And papers start getting printed. The news director turns to me and says, do you want to lead the 4:30 newscast? And I said, absolutely. Took a beat. And I said, I do have one question. Who is Jerry Kill? And I knew nothing about what was happening there. And I was not a big Gophers guy. I wasn't really following the Gophers tight from New Mexico.
Yeah.
I get into the car with our chief of photography, Joe Caffrey. And on the way over, he was wonderful. And I was like, give me everything I need to know. And he just spoke to me, gave me the background. We went, watched the press conference. I reported on it live at 4:30. And then I got a job offer. And it was a really bizarre thing. But I thought my career was just going to stay in news. I was like, I need to get good at this now. I need to develop here. So when I guest co-hosted a couple months into being in this building, I told Elizabeth Reese, my co-host, I will not be going out for co-host. Like, I'm not going to try out for that. I got to get good at news. And Elizabeth is never shy to remind me that she said, you'll change your mind. And then I changed my mind.
Wow. Fantastic. And that was what, 2014-ish, somewhere in that range?
Yep. And by the way, that was in 2014. And talk about learning a lesson before and then applying it to a new circumstance. I wanted to be the morning news anchor. That was my goal when I moved here. I'll start as a reporter. I'll be the morning news anchor. I get hired. The position becomes available. I thought, get in there, win some people over, and let's see if this can work. And I'm in the runnings, in theory. A bunch of people were. The news director is some night in February or some morning in February said, come into my office when you get here. Again, ripped the Band-Aid off, said, you were not selected as the morning news anchor. They're giving the job to Chris Eggert, and who is still with the morning news team. But in that moment, I absorbed the no, had the context to remember, wait a minute, that means that wasn't for me. I'm going to look back and be thankful that this was a no. And I remember I said to her, they that means that was for Chris, and congratulations to him. And then they said, where do you want to be? And I said, I'd still like to be a part of the morning team if I can. They had me be a reporter there. And I got to develop a rapport with the morning team, which was really fun. And they were really welcoming. And that then enabled me the space to start co-hosting more and more on Twin Cities Live. Mm-hmm. And here again, I look back, and God love our morning news team, but everyone knows I am a clown. And so divine disappointment, the thing I wanted to happen, which was to become the morning news anchor, it didn't happen. And I look back with such gratitude that door closed. And then a few months later, the right door opened.
And when you go to an hour and a half long, live show, did all the other shows you were doing in New Mexico with reels and, do you feel like, hey, yeah, I can do this. This is already the space I've been. Or is that something where you're like, geez, I better work and try to figure out how I can get good at this? Were you a little freaked out with maybe just the context of it being a live show?
I felt really excited about that.
Okay.
Because at reels, the only live that you get is when you're on the red carpet, and because you get one shot to ask the celebrity. So that built me for the pressure, if we'll call it that. I liked that. Give me a shot where the challenge, where the publicist says, hey, you get 2 questions. How can you get a good 2 minutes out of this person? Mm-hmm. But when we shot the studio shows, they were not live.
Oh.
And that is the curse of all broadcasting. If anyone can hear me, just do it live. You save so much time. The beauty, what I love about Twin Cities Live is that it's live. And so when we screw up, we don't care. It's a human moment. It turns into content. It's fodder for us. It's great. And if we can ever keep someone from having the option to say, I'd like to try that again, that is the way to go. It's so much, for me, it's more human. You get one shot. We're doing this. And no matter how good or bad it was, we'll do it again tomorrow. And you don't even overanalyze any given show, because you realize we're doing so many of these. This is a mosaic. I was in my happy place.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to take a break right here. And after the break, I want to ask you about a recent decision you made regarding Twin Cities Live. Hey there, this is Joe. You know me as the host of this podcast, but did you know that I'm also the co-founder and president of Moxie Wealth Management, a boutique wealth management firm in Minneapolis, Minnesota? My team and I excel at taking complex family and business planning concepts and making our financial advice easy to understand. We recognize the trust that executives and families place in our team and value our role in helping our clients be intentional with their assets. When you partner with Moxie, my team and I focus on creating a plan that encompasses your financial goals and philanthropy, while also understanding how you want your wealth to impact your family and future generations. You can trust our unique expertise to build a thoughtful yet strategic wealth and legacy plan for your future. To learn more about me and my firm, send me an email at joe@moxiewealth.com. That's joe@moxiewealth.com. I'm a registered representative and investment advisor representative of Securian Financial Services, Inc. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Securian Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. North Star Resource Group is independently owned and operated. Moxie Wealth Management is affiliated with North Star Resource Group. In September of 2021 now, Steve, you announced, what was your announcement relating to Twin Cities Live?
It was that I would be leaving Twin Cities Live, yeah.
And is there a definite date on that, or how has that evolved now?
My final date is November 24th.
Okay.
So we have just a handful of shows left. So we're really in the home stretch at the time that you and I are talking. We're at the home stretch of just getting all sentimental and sappy.
Well, I can feel the energy when we talk about it, and it sounds like you love the show. What went into the decision to make a change?
I never saw myself as we have an iconic meteorologist here, Dave Dahl, who just retired after 40 years last year. And what an unbelievable career. I could never imagine myself doing any job for 40 years. I'm surprised I made it 7. I mean, it's like, I'm like a dog, like just any sound. And I'm like, we should probably go look at that. Let's go investigate that. So the fact that we've had this go as long as it has, with me being a part of it, is great. But yeah, I never saw myself doing a really long run. But with that, TV's contracts, right? So you do a 2 or 3 year contract, and it's at the end of the contract that you have a little time where you sort of permit yourself a little space to think about what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And so then I just started thinking, when a contract term came up, what do I want to do? And I just sort of started to feel like, I think in terms of tough to identify things inside of me, I want to try something else. That's tough because they have paid me every 2 weeks. They've never missed a pay period. And so, there's a lot of comfort in that. And I really have loved the job. The team is really great. And we've had turnover there like anybody does. But each time there's turnover, there's new energy and there's new excitement. And what it has provided me, which is connecting with people every day as they have their coffee in the middle of the afternoon, that is better than any of the work that I did at Reels. Like any of the celebrity interviews that I did, they were really fun and enjoyable. But what's been meaningful in the work that I've done in television to this point is the connection that I have when people come up to me at Target and say, I feel like I know you and I know your kids and here's what you mean my afternoon. That is better than a Will Ferrell interview, cool as those are.
Right.
So walking away from that and realizing that even though I will still work for the radio station, which is in this same building, that it's still a goodbye to the rhythm of what my days are, to how I interact with the team. I'll be in the same building, but it's different, right? And the toughest part was just realizing that would mean not making TV with Elizabeth Reese, my co-host anymore, who's been my favorite television partner that I've ever had. And it's not close because we just really genuinely are interested in each other. We set each other up. We're equally amused in each other is how we sort of describe our chemistry. And I've never had as easy of chemistry with anyone as I have her. And that happened from the very first time that I guest co-hosted. I instantly felt comfortable. We made each other laugh. And we now take such joy when we can tell the other person is about to get wound up and go off on something.
Yeah.
Sort of sit back like the audience because we know what's going to happen and we just want to watch them go. There is no competition there. It's mutual enjoyment in each other. So saying goodbye to that and our special connection that we have on screen, that will be difficult.
Well, as you mentioned, you host a radio show for 3 hours a day as well. Then this show is another hour and a half. We had Leah McLean on the show a little while back, and she made a career decision for her because she wanted to spend more time with her girls. I'm only trying to imagine what your typical work day is like. Was family part of it and wanting to spend more time with the kids?
Yeah, as we started to consider what life would look like if I didn't work on Twin Cities Live, as you put your pros and cons list together, one of the immediate pros was, oh, wow, I'll be home at 1 p.m. every day. And the kids, I'll be home before the kids get home. And, as it stands now, usually I'm getting home somewhere around 5:30 or 6. And if you're leaving the house at around 7:15 or 7:30, and then you're doing some prep at home, it would bring a lot of calm to the day. And so immediately I thought this will be a family benefit. There's no way that it can't be. Just by nature of my days will become a lot more decompressed.
Right.
And as they stand now, I'll just give you this morning. It starts off, the alarm goes off. It's 6 o'clock, go downstairs, get some coffee, crack open the computer, start to prep for the radio show. Kids start to come downstairs at 6:30, which absolutely implodes any sort of creativity that you were having. Because now they're talking about random things. You don't want to seem distant. You do need to get your work done. Now they're asking questions. Here comes mom. There's a baby now. Did anybody let the dog out? I should probably shower. We need to send something over to TV because we're going to do a live hit on the radio station today with TV. So I need to send something to them before I leave that they approve. Then you get in the car. Then you drive over here and then you're doing the radio show. And then once the radio show ends, and that's all deadline-y, right? Everything's very deadline driven. And so that's tight. And then you walk down the hall to TV. And then especially in pre-pandemic days, then you go out. There could be meetings. There could be shoots. You need to read through the show so that you don't seem like an unattached idiot during the show. That you've had a meeting the night before, hearing from all of the producers what the segments are going to be. But it's amazing what you can forget the night before until the next day. So then you're reading, making any changes that you need to, asking any follow-up questions. Producers are touching base with you. Hey, one more thing that changed about my segment. Then you should probably go and put some better clothes on, do a little bit of makeup. And then you're on for 3 to 4:30. And then you got a 4:40 p.m. meeting, detoxing, sort of talking about downloading what happened that day.
Right.
And so there's just not a lot of margin in there. I'm way behind on doctor's appointments. I am way behind on seeing the dentist for routine checkups. It's a pretty packed day, which any given day is a lot. But when that's Monday and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are just like that, I think there's probably a compounding effect where the rhythm of that, if you can decompress it, if there's a way to do it, that's interesting. But the tough part is it means walking away from something that you really enjoy. The thing that motivates me and has me excited is I'm excited about some other opportunities that may or may not materialize, but I'm excited about the freedom to creatively explore. And I'm just as interested as anybody else as to what my life will look like in 12 months. I'm going to continue working on radio, which I love. And I'm so happy that they will continue to have me. And I've told them, I don't know if opportunities are going to come. I don't know if I'm going to need a lot of flexibility or not. And they have been really cool and said, we want to go on the ride with you.
Right.
New York or LA, if any of those things come up, if you can take the radio show there too, take it there. If we need to be flexible, come back with stories. So they've really, I told them, I said, do you accept me moving forward with warts? Like, I think there are going to be some bumps in the road here that aren't so typical, but I think could be beneficial for all of us. And they've been super supportive and really cool about that. So we're all sitting back now and waiting and watching to see what 2022 looks like.
One of the things as we kind of wrap up here is, what do you think is the greatest contributor to your own success? I mean, I hear a little from you, divine intervention or trusting that everything has a reason. I'm sure there has to be a lot of perseverance, that kind of thing. What do you think, from where you've started to where you are today, what do you think has really contributed the most to that success?
You're right, first of all, but I'll give you a more specific answer. You are right that, I believe there's divine intervention, and it's funny, like part of it is we got to do the work, right? We got to be active. But I also think at the end of all this, we'll look back and that God might open our eyes and be like, that was all the plan. This was all worked out. So trusting in God's provision for my life, that is key for me. And just believing I don't have to get so upset maybe about the ups and the downs, but trust that there's a plan that's being worked out. But maybe more practically, never be afraid of no. I think I've been pretty almost naively unconcerned with being turned down from something. And that has opened doors for me. And so that allowed us to get onto the first red carpet. And then that spins into a bunch of other things. And then even asking for things, I might feel sheepish in the moment if I'm asking for an opportunity at work, but it feels like, what do we have to lose? So not being afraid of no, and just like continuing to move forward. And then when an opportunity comes into your mind, reach out again. And if it's a no, that's okay. And by the way, that, one of the really great experiences that I've had as a result of my time on Twin Cities Live is developing a relationship with the team at Live with Kelly and Ryan. People talk to me about the times that I've been on the show and done weather reports and stuff like that. But there were other times when I sent them ideas and for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. But I didn't ever let those no's get in the way of me asking again when another idea came. And we went 4 years between working together, January of 2015 and then January of 2019. We had a 4-year gap between a big polar vortex. And I sent them probably 1 or 2 stories each year, a couple that I thought had legs, one that almost went, but then they ended up, for whatever reason, just being a no. So you could let that tell you that the journey's over, or you could just be totally unconcerned with a no. We give too much power to no. It's like, who cares? If they say no, they might say yes. Kind of like, how about when you ask for $10,000 more, when the guy says don't ask for any more at the initial salary negotiation? Who cares? They might say yes. And I was $10,000 richer that day as a result. But they said no a bunch of times. And then in 2019, at the right time, they say yes. The clip goes viral. They have me back on the next week. They asked me out to help them with Oscars coverage. And then they just keep inviting me all the way up to the point, oh, how about this? All the way up to the point where I asked for the second time if Gelman, their executive producer, would ever consider me as a co-host. My mother's dream for so long. I had asked him years ago. And then right at the beginning of 2020, I sent him a note and I said, Gelman, I don't know why. I just feel like this is the year. And I'm just going to pitch this to you. Here's how I think we could have me as a guest co-host. Weeks go by. I don't hear from him. I send him a note and say, hey, there's a snowstorm coming on Thursday. You guys want to do something? His assistant texts me, said, Gelman wants to talk to you after your show. And I was like, great, I get to do the snow shoot. It's going to be great. He calls and he says, hey, chit chat. hey, I'm going to make that dream come true. I want you to come out and guest co-host. I said, Gelman, I thought we were talking about, what about the snow on Thursday? He was like, no. Forget about the snow. We don't have time for the snow. I want you to come out April 1st and guest co-host. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, go figure. This actually, years after I originally asked, is now a yes. And then, spoiler alert, it became a no when the pandemic happened. And then I was supposed to go on April 1st. They don't have a studio audience. They're doing it remote from Kelly's place and Ryan's place. And so now I'm on the great hold there. But guess what? I'm just so unafraid of no. 2022 is the year that I will finally get to guest co-host.
It seems like you're in charge of like The Secret or something. Like you just bend the universe around just to do what it is that you want.
Yeah, I think persistence and just, if you hit a brick wall, I think it was in the book, The Last Lecture. He was talking about when people hit a brick wall, a lot of people just quit there. But some people just try to figure out, is there a way that I can climb over this wall? And I just try to find ways. If it's something I'm really excited about, is there a way that we can make this happen? And so some fun things have happened, I think, as a result. So don't be afraid of the word no. It's powerless only if you give it power.
Well, Steve, I just want to thank you for taking the time. This has been fantastic. I've had a lot of fun, and I appreciate you being part of the podcast.
Happy to be here. Continued success on what you're doing.
You've been listening to my interview with entertainment host Steve Patterson. Shortly after our recording, Steve announced on Instagram that he was invited to tape some holiday stories on Live with Kelly and Ryan. As expected, divine disappointment seems to be working its magic for Steve again. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ascent Podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, wealth advisor and founding partner of Moxie Wealth Management. You can learn more about me and my firm at moxiewealthmanagement.com. That's MOXIE wealthmanagement.com. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.